Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. Today, I am joined by Miss Liz Kelly. Liz has 20 plus years of PR and marketing experience. She is the she's secured top media coverage for clients including the Today Show, CNN, BBC, World News, and as well as NPR and in Time, People, and Forbes magazine. Her Goody PR agency has won 6 PR industry awards, including Best Publicity Campaign, Best Public Relations Program, and Best Media Relations Campaign for her national publicity campaign for American Paper Optics/Eclipse glasses. These awards inspired her new book, Award-Winning Publicity book. Kelly is a Johns Hopkins University Carey School of Business graduate, autism advocate, loves living in Southern California near the beach and mountains, and is a member of the National Press Club. So she's here to share a little bit more about her writing journey, the kind of inspiration behind her book um, that she's released, and she's going to kind of just share some stories about her time being a writer. So Liz, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today. I am looking forward to hearing your story. Welcome to Southern Reads.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Noah, and thank you for that introduction. And yeah, it's been quite the journey, so I'm honored to be here.
So a lot of your story kind of begins in you working for PR. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in PR and decided to start Goody PR.
Sure, that's a great place to start. I wrote a dating book after 9/11. I was actually a stranded business traveler in New York, and a friend of mine who was a crisis counselor in the Navy said, write down your feelings. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, just write it down. It'll make you feel better. And so that experience got me back into writing. And then I tried to get that story published, and nobody really wanted to publish it because they were more focused on the sad loss of almost 3,000 Americans, which was just horrible. And then I got laid off a couple months later. So I said, you know what? I'm going to write a book about something positive. So I wrote a dating book, and I really didn't know what I was doing. So I went to coffee with a lot of people and said, how do you write a book? How do you get an agent? How do you get a publisher? And then it was like a treasure hunt. And I just kept going on all these, coffee dates and going to seminars, and one person would lead to the other. Anyway, that book ended up being a big success. I had over 500 media interviews for it, and this was over 5 years. So I thought, well, I'm pretty good at this. I wonder what it would be like to do it for other people. And then you fast forward to 2008, and I got laid off from MySpace in the beginning of the Great Recession. And that's when I said, I'm going to take that leap of faith and I'm going to start Goody PR. I had no clue how to write a contract or create a corporation. And I went to a Rich Dad conference for Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And there were all these entrepreneurs in the room who then became my first clients and taught me how to get started. So that was the beginning of my PR/writing journey.
And during your time and working in that business, you won multiple awards for the company. You've worked for huge clients at really huge platforms across a lot of what people use for news and see and read all the time. And it kind of led you to write this new book that you have titled Award-Winning Publicity. Share with me the story behind what made you want to sit down and write out your accomplishments and share your story on paper.
Sure. Well, the main thing that I wanted to do with writing this book was to help other people who have a book, a brand, or a business to promote, because those are primarily our clients, but not everybody can afford us. And so I'll say to them, well, all our secrets are in this book. So if you read the book, it's $20. If you hire us, it's going to be a lot more. But so that's kind of the big picture purpose. But the reality and the inspiration behind this book was I had worked with an attorney slash author client in Memphis, Tennessee, and he was an employment law attorney. And I got him national TV, and I got him in the business journals, which gets syndicated in 44 cities across the country. So that means you get quoted in one article and it appears in 44 cities. So that's like media gold. You love when that happens. So he was really happy, and he also had a local publicist. I do a lot of national publicity. I also do local publicity. But he had a local PR person who then met with these Eclipse glasses people, and they said, "We want somebody to help us get in national media. Do you know anybody?" And she recommended us. And then that campaign was so off the charts. First of all, I love to learn. If you want to be in PR or you want to be in marketing, you have to love to learn, because you have to figure out how to message about the product and explain it in simple terms so that people can understand and tell stories behind it. So I could only remember stuff about eclipse from, I don't know, fifth grade. What year did we learn about eclipses? And so I started reading books and watching videos and learning everything I could about eclipses. And then I worked closely with the chief marketing officer, the CMO, and we divided and conquered and really worked well as a team. And we ended up coming up with 10 what I call media hooks or media stories. Those are the things where it's like you're watching the news and they say, coming up next, you're going to hear about, how eclipse glasses are made to safely protect your eyes. So then that makes you want to watch and make you want to stay. So we came up with 10 different unique stories and unique media hooks. And then I looked at the path of the eclipse. There's a total solar eclipse in 2024, and it went through 15 states. And I looked up every city that was on that direct path and started pitching them. And we ended up getting 54 TV interviews in 8.5 months. And I'm just going to say that again, because that is so crazy off the charts. 54 TV interviews in 8.5 months. That's what I would get for another client over 5 years. So it is so crazy, and in a good way. And I had other PR friends, because I have a whole network of PR friends and mentors, and they had been applying for awards. And I asked them, I said, "What is this?" And they said, "Well, yeah, you should do it. It helps with your reputation if you say you applied for these awards and you got them." And I had so much success with that Eclipse Glasses campaign. I was like, well, okay, I'm going to try it. And let me tell you, it was expensive. Like some of the one nomination was $800 in some cases, but my gut feeling was I'm going to win. So I'm going to do this and I need to invest. So that's what I did. We won 6 PR industry awards. And then when I decided I want to write a book about it, I said, well, that's the title, Award-Winning Publicity. And it's been a great journey. And we loved working with that client. But we'll work with anybody because we love to learn. And the beginning of our career was training and development. And we started companies. And if we couldn't figure it out, nobody was going to figure it out. So we had to do it right. And that's really where I fell in love with branding and messaging. And then that's how I started that book.
Yeah, when you think about PR, I majored in journalism, so I kind of was in that. I had a lot of students or a lot of classmates that were PR majors as well. And basically, we all got taught the same thing. You have to know how to learn things when it comes to anything with journalism and PR, or basically anything in the liberal arts program. You have to be able to learn a multitude of things to be able to be successful in that market and in that business. What I really like about your book is that you kind of have split it up into three different parts. What made you want to break your book up into three parts? And if you could just kind of briefly share what each part kind of consists and what it all entails.
Absolutely. So the that's a great question. The main reason why I broke it up into three parts, and by the way, there's 8 chapters, but 3 parts because of the rule of threes. And this is something that I use throughout the whole book. And the rule of threes is about if you tell stories or do interviews with 3 things, then it's easier for them to absorb it, and it's also easier for them to remember it. Because while I have 8 chapters, if I listed all 8 chapters right now, you might zone out. But if I just give you 3 key parts, it's easier to follow. So, for example, the part 1 is about build your PR success strategy. Part 2 is about attract media success. And then part 3 is about measuring your results and magnifying the story so it goes viral. And I can go through each part briefly, but it's much easier to follow that because, okay, so part 1, build your PR success strategy. You can't go anywhere in PR without researching, or as we just discussed, you have to learn whatever you're promoting is about, and then you have to figure out where is what I call the story magic, or the wow story that is going to get that reporter to want to interview you, because there's tons of PR books out there. There's also tons of doctors, tons of lawyers, and I put the numbers actually in award-winning publicity. And so you're competing against all those other people. So you can't just say, I know how to do publicity. You have to say, I wrote a book about this campaign that got 54 TV interviews in 8.5 months and won 6 awards. And then people say, okay, what is this about? So the other thing in part 1 is building the campaign. That's your media hooks that we talked about, the topics. So that's all part 1. That's your foundation. And then part 2 about attracting media interviews and PR value, I call it actually. That's the 3 M's. So you have media outreach, media training, and media relations. So media outreach is all about pitching the media, and there's a whole art to that I describe in the book. Media training is, okay, now you got the interview. How do you get ready? How do you look good on camera? How do you talk in sound bites? What are you going to wear? What are you going to do for your body language? All that kind of stuff. Those tips are in the media training section. And then the other part of that part is media relations. And I had a client once who said to me, oh, Liz, why can't they work on our schedule? And if they don't want to work on our schedule, I'm just going to go talk to somebody else. And I'm thinking in my mind, OMG, that is so crazy, because once you find a reporter who likes you and you get their cell phone, then the great things will happen if they keep inviting you back. So for example, I had a great relationship with a reporter with NBC Norfolk, and I think she's done 5 interviews with my different clients. I also have a great relationship with the producer at CNN. So when somebody gives you their cell phone and you can text them and you can get an answer back, that's great for media relations. And you want that. And then part 3 is magnify and measure your wins. And magnify is ideally you want your story to go viral. You want other people to pick it up. And that's exactly what happened with the Eclipse glasses. ABC News with David Muir, that call came in not because I pitched them. It came in because there was so much buzz and there was so much media out there that when they Googled for who's the top Eclipse manufacturer in the country, American Paper Optics came up first. So that's a example of magnifying the story. It's one story leads to another, and it's a domino impact. And then measure your wins. We have all kinds of tools to measure what was the reach, how many millions of people did you reach, how many media hits did you get, how many likes did you get, things like that. And those are things that if you are in PR, every client wants to know those numbers. But if you're not in PR and you're just, reading the book because you want to do it yourself, it also will help you figure out, what interviews make more sense to spend your time, because we all only have so many hours in the day. And so you want to be able to prioritize what's the best place to go.
Now, since the publication of the book and, being able to release it out there, what's been the feedback that you have received so far from maybe from critics as well as maybe fellow PR majors and people that work in public relations? What's been their response to it?
That's another great question. I think overall the response has been really feedback. I can't talk here. The response has been really positive, and it's just a side tip. I learned how to play piano just because I flubbed there for a second. I learned how to play piano at a later age, and my piano teacher told me, if you mess up, you just keep playing, and you just keep going with confidence. And that's the same thing with media. You don't get frazzled if you make a mistake. You just keep going and laugh, and don't take yourself too seriously, because otherwise it's going to be no fun, and you want this to be fun. But okay, so going back to the question about the feedback on the book, the feedback has been really positive. Book Life Reviews did a review, and they said it's a great resource for anybody seeking marketing and media success. So I was really grateful for that review. The Midwest Book Reviews, they said it would be great as a textbook, which also makes me feel good because my previous book was used as a textbook. The previous book is 8-Second PR, and that book has done really well, but it's got 8 things in each chapter, where Award-Winning Publicity, everything we did was 3 things. And so part of the feedback has been people really like that the new book is more focused on 3 key tips in each chapter.
Did you expect the book to get this much praise or get this much attention when you first initially released it?
Well, I hoped it would, but you just never know. And I definitely will say that promoting a book is hard. Writing a book is hard. Doing publicity is hard. So what you have to do is you have to not get upset if you get rejected or you're not getting reviews right away. And you just have to have this attitude that I have, which is PR is a marathon, not a sprint. And so when you're doing this marathon, you have to pivot and adjust. So for example, I rewrote the book description on Amazon probably at least 5 times. And so the first time I wrote it, I put, the target audience at the bottom of the description. And then I thought, well, okay, it's not selling. Let's put it up at the top. And then I put the Book Life review up at the top too. And I think moving those 2 things around really helped. I also put examples of the media I've gotten, like on the Today Show and CNN and NPR for clients. I put that higher up on the top. And so you do have to play with your book and the messaging and the marketing and see what clicks, and ask your friends or your colleagues for honest feedback. Say to them, what would you change? And say, don't just say it looks great. Please give me your honest feedback, because like I said, it's a process. PR is a marathon.
For the tips that you listed in the book, what tends to be the number one tip or the one that people don't know about or fail the most at?
Hmm. That's it. That's great. I like that question. I think the thing that surprises people that I deal with every day with my clients is that the story, when you go out to the media, the story is not necessarily about you, it's about how can you help people. So, for example, I worked with an addiction center for 10 years for military veterans and first responders. And that's a great story right there because they're giving back, they're helping our heroes, but the actual organization was not the story. The story was more about their canine trainer, who was a former zookeeper who trains the dogs 120 hours each for each behavior. So let me explain that. If somebody has PTSD and they shake their leg, it takes them 120 hours to train the dog to go up to the veteran and put their paw on their leg to get them to stop shaking their leg. That's 120 hours. And that's what I call a wow story. And it also included helpful tips on how do you train a dog and how do they work with the dogs with veterans. So tips are really important. A wow story is really important, and make it not about how great you are. That's the thing I think maybe surprises people because they're so proud and excited about their book or their company, and they put a lot of effort and energy into that. So I totally get it. But you have to go to the side and you have to say, okay, what is going to make people say wow, and how can I help people?
Do you think a lot of the tips that you have mentioned and listed in the book are tips that people are not aware of after they graduate from college?
Yes, I think there's a lot of information in there because that people would not know right after they graduate from college. And part of that is because when you're in college, you're learning, maybe you're doing an internship. If you're doing an internship, that's wonderful, but it's still not taking the leap into the real world until you get out of college and then you start doing this. Because when I first got into PR, I had the experience of promoting my dating book, but did not have the experience of promoting other people. So I had to keep learning. It was a continual process where every day I woke up and I said, okay, what can I do different today to get more media attention on my clients? And who can I call? And you have to do things like take time out to get your creative brainstorming going. So that's a big part I talk about in the book. And what I do is I try to go on daily walks. I try to walk 2 to 5 miles a day. And then I will get these lightning bolts and I will get these ideas and I will come back and I say, hey, I just thought of this for you. What do you think about that? Because it's 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 not a black and white checklist where you just go down. There's a lot of creativity that you have to do in public relations, marketing, journalism. All of that is you have to really think outside the box and think differently.
Looking ahead, do you plan on writing any more self-help books about this similar topic, or maybe have different focuses on different set vantage points of PR, or where would you like to take your writing career?
That's a really good question that I honestly haven't thought about a lot because I just launched award-winning publicity, but I think we always need to be thinking ahead. And I think where maybe I can do more help is in the media training area. I definitely have a chapter in the new book, but I think that's something that I may be able to help with. I also have an interesting chapter in the book that's not in my other books that could maybe turn into a whole book. And that's called Book Marketing Booster, and is what to do before, during, and after you publish your book from a book marketing standpoint. And it's 75 steps in a checklist. And it's amazing how authors come to me and they've made mistakes because they haven't thought about this stuff. So I just kind of did a brain dump and so I could write a book about that, or I could offer more book coaching services. And it's the basic things that most people just don't think about. It. Number one would be a cliche book title. Number two, they don't buy the booktitle.com. And number three, they don't think about their Amazon marketing strategy. So there's so many things. But for example, I've had two clients with what I would call cliche titles, and one of them was called Playing for Keeps. Now, that's a fun title, but the problem is there's 3 movies called Playing for Keeps and 10 books called Playing for Keeps. So it's how are you going to be unique? And so what we did was we had to shift it, and we started just promoting her name as the place to go. And then we bought hername.com. So some of those things I think could really help people and maybe are part of my future writing.
Well, Liz, I appreciate you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today to share your story and to really do a really good deep dive into helping people. I think with these tips and tricks with this book, I think it's going to be really beneficial for so many people that are in PR and have a background and degree in public relations. I think it will really help them. For people interested in the book, if they are in college and maybe they're not getting the full tips and they just need some extra guidance, where can they go to purchase your book, and where can they go to follow you to learn more about the book and well as whatever you may have coming up in the future?
Well, thank you, Noah, for asking. If you want to get the book, you can go to Amazon or just go to award-winningpublicity.com and there'll be a link to Amazon. And then if you want to check out more about me, you can go to my website, Goody with a Y, goodypr.com.
And I will put her website and the socials down below in the description box as I always do, as well as in the show notes. So feel free to just check down below to find all the information regarding her website and social media accounts. Feel free to follow the podcast on the socials as well. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at southern.reads. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcasts. And feel free to also go to the website, noahspodcasts.com, to learn more about this show as well as the other shows that I do. There you'll find links to all my socials for each podcast and where the podcast is available. And feel free to subscribe so you get notified of when new episodes come out. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I will catch you in the next episode of Southern Reads.